Exclusive contract from Feilu Novel Network novel. Rebirth. From the king of comics to the commercial dynasty Rebirth, I realized that I was just an illegal immigrant crossing the Xiangjiang River. This is 1978, when the mainland opened up and the world began to enter a very prosperous world. Xiangjiang's girls are just starting their careers, and from now until the next 10 years will be their peak period of beauty. This is the best and worst era. Starting from comics, creating a commercial dynasty. Li Jiachen, your Hutchison Whampoa was intercepted by me. Starting from today, you have been acquired by the 4 major foreign companies. All the beautiful girls are packed and taken away. I want to create a commercial dynasty. Feilu Novel Network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. Chapter 1. Rebirth. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Line Trough. When Su Chen opened his eyes, he realized that he seemed to be on the sea. The cold seawater constantly stimulated his nerves. A wave of sea breeze blows, permeates the water surface, and the waves shimmer. Su Chen shuddered with excitement. Who am I? Where am I? Su Chen struggled hard to avoid sinking into the sea. The sound of splashing water quickly made Su Chen realize his situation. Nowadays, I am in the midst of the ocean. Shit. In an instant, Su Chen felt countless memories surging into his heart. I am now a stowaway. Now he is following his good brother to flee to Xiangjiang. Worry. Su Chen couldn't help but let out a helpless voice. The current timeline is 1978, and millions of mainland Chinese immigrants jumped into the sea and illegally crossed the Xiangjiang River. Time traveled. Reborn. However, this way of traveling really caught Su Chen off guard. At least prepare yourself. Did you just traverse directly like this? Damn it. I have traveled, at least I need to be given some benefits. This journey is on the sea, who can bear it? Su Chen's heart kept roast, but also felt that his body was getting weaker and weaker. My physical fitness is gradually becoming unsustainable. This body is really too thin and weak, it is completely out of class with the body that I have diligently exercised in my past life. He even doubted whether he would drown directly. Gudong. Suddenly, a wave hit, and Su Chen felt like he had lost control of his body. Then, he sank into the sea. Damn it, I just crossed over, shouldn't I just hang up? As soon as this idea came out, Su Chen was completely submerged in the sea. It's over. Ah Chen, wake up, Ah Chen. Su Chen felt a pain in his cheeks, as if someone was patting his face, and the force was a bit strong. Worry. Just as Su Chen wanted to make a sound, a terrifying force pressed directly on his lower abdomen, and then the terrifying force erupted. Su Chen suddenly opened his eyes, and then, with a sore throat, he spat out a few mouthfuls of seawater. Who? Su Chen felt as if he had gone through hell, feeling extremely uncomfortable in his internal organs, heart, lungs, and intestines. As Su Chen watched the big man in front of him approach again and still pounce at him, he quickly reached out his hand and said, Stop, stop, stop. Ah Chen, are you awake? The big man looked at Su Chen with a surprised expression on his face. Wake up, don't mess with me. With your strength, if you continue to mess around, I will die on the spot. Su Chen only felt a hoarse throat, and a wave of exhaustion surged into his heart. Ah Chen, are you okay? Great, I knew you didn't die young. You scared me to death, really. The person ignored Su Chen's words and shouted in an excited tone, Ah Chen, we've arrived at Xiangjiang. Do you know that every meal we have every day, there's meat to eat, vegetables to eat, and endless rice to eat? Don't sleep now, open your eyes and take a look. I know now, this is Xiangjiang. Su Chen let out a weak voice, feeling the fragmented memories in his mind. I am Su Chen, the dust of dust, Su Zi Su. Su Chen suddenly remembered the name of the person beside him, which was Su Mang from the same village as him. What is the origin of the two of them? A good brother from a dilapidated mountain village. I want to follow the trend and come from the mainland to Xiangjiang to make a living. Wipe. Su Mang, as his name suggests, acts recklessly and recklessly. He is over 1.8 meters tall, with a sturdy and powerful physique. This guy has practiced kung fu before. I have excellent skills, and when I was in my hometown, there was no problem hitting 10 at a time. And myself, to be honest, an ordinary person. The two of them have arranged to come to Xiangjiang to seek refuge with their relatives. Damn it. I didn't dream, I really traveled. After a while of confusion, Su Chen finally accepted the fact that he had traveled through time. In fact, time travel is not unfamiliar. The most important thing is that after just sinking into the sea, there is a prolonged lack of oxygen, which leads to a lack of flexibility and confusion in the brain. Now I have come to my senses. Glancing at the big man with a simple and honest smile in front of me. Ah Mang, thank you. Su Chen spoke sincerely. Huh, what am I doing? Su Mang scratched his head and then said, you often say that one person has two brothers, don't you? We brothers, we will have both blessings and difficulties in this life. That's right. You're right. There are two brothers in a world, Ah Mang. If I take a bite in the future, I won't miss you. Su Chen looked at Su Mang, but a hint of gratitude appeared on his face. If it weren't for this guy, I might have drowned alive. Su Chen has always been grateful for his kindness. Now, Su Mang has saved himself. Su Chen naturally wanted to repay kindness. After resting for a full hour, Su Chen felt that his strength was gradually recovering. The salty and humid sea breeze brings a tingling sensation to the muscles. I have crossed the river and arrived at Xiangjiang. This is Xiangjiang. Su Mang had never seen the world before, let alone come to Xiangjiang. Looking at the unfamiliar scenery around him, he instinctively asked Su Chen, Ah Chen, which way to go? I don't know, you let me take a break first. Su Chen shook his head, trying to recover his strength. He realized that Su Mang's physical strength was really strong. There is no feeling of fatigue at all. Feeling her physical recovery, Su Chen couldn't help but turn back and take a look at the mainland. Although he is more optimistic about the future of the mainland, now that he is in Xiangjiang, he couldn't help shaking his head and muttering to himself, forget it. Although the future development of the mainland is good, now Xiangjiang is the paradise of capitalists. Su Chen took a deep breath. In his past life, he couldn't be considered a top tycoon, but at least he had accumulated millions of assets. Reborn in 1978, I said I wanted to make a career out of nothing. Don't be fooled. He wants to be the king of Xiangjiang. Ding dong. At this moment, a mechanical voice echoed in Su Chen's ear. Rebirth system bound, detecting host Su Chen bound successfully. System. Chapter 2. Beggar. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Su Chen has also read many novels in his past life, and he has long been accustomed to the emergence of the system. Deep down, extremely calm. System, what is your role? The system is a rebirth system. The system mechanically replied, bind the host, and the system will release both main and hidden tasks. Main tasks can receive system rewards. Hidden tasks require the host to slowly explore, and the system will also receive rewards. Rewards are divided into B level, A level, and S level, and the richness of rewards is determined based on the difficulty of the host task. Ding dong, beginner's gift pack, give away the host's comic talent at S. level. The sound of the system echoed in Su Chen's ear. S. level, manga talent, what is this? Su Chen was still puzzled, and then he heard the voice of the system continuing. The system task has been released. Please complete the main task, million assets. After obtaining million assets, the system will reappear. Clack. Before her eyes darkened, and then Su Chen felt as if something had been added to her brain, causing a lot of nervousness. S.level comic talent. What is this thing? System. After exchanging thoughts a few times, Su Chen found that the system did not appear, which made him somewhat puzzled. If it weren't for the sudden addition of a lot of knowledge about comics, he would almost doubt whether he had hallucinations. Ah Chen, what's wrong with you? Su Meng reached out and shook his hand in front of Su Chen. I'm fine. Su Chen sat up, not sure if it was due to binding the system. Su Chen could clearly feel his physical recovery. He stood up and glanced at Su Meng, saying, let's go first. The landing place, Su Chen roughly judged, should be Yulang. At this time, many places in Yulang were not developed, which was completely different from Yulang 30 years later, with a sharp contrast. However, Su Chen still doesn't have these thoughts at the moment. What he needs most is to stabilize. He is confident, relying on his own memory, he will never do worse than anyone in the future. However, for now, it is still necessary to be able to establish a firm foothold in Xiangjiang. Su Chen and Su Meng have a cousin named Su Yoxin, who came to Xiangjiang a few years ago to take root. Nowadays, I can also be considered quite open in Xiangjiang. Take refuge with my cousin. This is the purpose of the original owner of the body. The two of them were a bit confused, but fortunately Su Chen's mind was more agile and he remembered the location. Along the way, another fishing cart was stopped. This guy is kind and promised to send himself to Kowloon. But Su Chen and Su Meng were leaning against the smuggled goods. Su Chen closed his eyes and took a nap, but his brain began to run rapidly. Xiangjiang in this era. Of course, it is not as prosperous as 40 years later, and the capital of the Eagle Country people is still strong in Xiangjiang. The four major foreign firms, Hutchison, began to decline, but it was obvious that Li Jiaqing did not take over Hutchison either. Bao Yugang still did not start acquiring Zhulongkang, nor did he later acquire Huidafeng Foreign Company. Chinese capital is slowly rising in Xiangjiang. This year, there will be a second oil crisis. Upon careful consideration, Su Chen suddenly realized that this era was filled with gold and wealth everywhere. If you are lucky, you only need to seize a few opportunities to get rich, and when Panoma created the goose factory in the 1990s, give it a gentle push. He is the richest person in China directly. This is a bit far away. If it were in 1983, could we directly invest in Apple, Steve Jobs, or Microsoft? The oil price in 1986 is about to plummet again. Su Chen squinted his eyes, but countless thoughts emerged in his heart. The world's richest man seems to be waving at himself. Speaking of which, it seems that there is not much room for development in mainland China in this era. Although it has been a period of change, there are still charges such as speculation and manipulation. In Asia, the most suitable place for the development of Chinese people is still Xiangjiang. Su Chen had a clear goal in his heart. I don't want anything else myself. Be the world's richest man. The truck arrived in Kowloon overnight, and Su Meng, who couldn't bear the smell of fish, jumped out of the car first. Su Chen followed closely behind. Su Meng stood on the streets of Kowloon, looking at the towering skyscrapers around him. He couldn't help but widen his eyes and exclaimed excitedly, Ah Chen, this is the Xiangjiang River, a place where gold is buried beneath the land. We have finally arrived. Su Chen chuckled and said, all right, stop talking nonsense. Let's go and find my cousin. I'm a bit hungry. Su Meng said. I'm also hungry. Su Chen followed suit and touched his stomach, then looked at Su Meng and asked, do you have money? I don't have it. What about you? Su Meng asked. Su Chen spread his hands together. Do you think I look rich like this? What should we do then? Su Mang couldn't help but ask. Cold salad. Su Chen pointed to a bakery not far away and said, have you seen that bakery? Ah. Su Mang nodded slightly and said, I see it. Snatch all the food. Su Chen joked. You're right. Su Mang nodded solemnly and actually walked towards the bakery. I'm sorry, Grandpa. Su Chen couldn't help but curse and quickly pulled Su Mang back. This is robbery, you're going to jail. But I'm really hungry. Su Mang couldn't help but say. As they were speaking, suddenly someone brushed past them. Then, looking at Su Chen and Su Mang, who were like beggars, they frowned and dropped a few Hong Kong dollars. Hee, thank you. Su Mang picked up the Hong Kong dollars and quickly spoke to this guy. The muscles at the corner of Su Chen's mouth couldn't help but slightly tug. The expression on his face also changed and changed. Finally, I accepted this money. Unexpectedly, the first thing I did when I came to Xiangjiang was to be mistaken for a beggar. The two of them went to the store with money. Su Mang took a bite of the bread and said, it's so big, so fragrant, so soft, so delicious. This is the best thing I've ever eaten in my life. Su Chen didn't speak, but nibbled at the bread. I didn't expect that the first thing I did during my rebirth would be to fall into the same field as I am today. If this were to be said, not many people would believe me. He swallowed the food in his mouth fiercely. Su Chen swore that he would definitely make a name for himself in this life. Admired by others. Chapter 3. Uncle. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Uncle. Ah Chen, what should we do next? Su Mang wiped out the bread in his mouth 3 times, then looked at Su Chen and asked. Su Chen handed the remaining half of the bread to Su Mang and slowly spoke, I just inquired, this place is not far from my uncle's house. As he spoke, Su Chen moved his muscles and bones all over his body and spoke calmly, since you're here, take it easy. Stop talking nonsense and let's go. The two of them were inquiring. Su Chen looked at the building in front of him, but he also knew that it was basically a cheap house, ultimately a resettlement house left by the government. The area is not large, about 30.40 square meters, and it is specifically used by the Xiangjiang government to solve the housing problem of the poor. However, if this goes on for 40 years, the price of 30 to 40 square meters may still be an astronomical number. You can still live in government affordable housing these days, but in 40 years, you won't even be able to live in government affordable housing. 2 people climbed several floors, knocked on the door, and then pushed open the door, revealing a middle-aged woman. As soon as she saw Su Chen and Su Mang, she immediately showed a very vigilant gaze. After carefully examining them, she asked, who are you looking for? Su Mang quickly leaned his face towards him and said, female comrade, is this Su Yoxin's home? It's Su Yoxin's family, that's right. I'm his wife. He's not at home right now. If you have anything to do, come back another day. Both Su Chen and Su Mang now look completely like a beggar. Especially Su Mang, he not only looks like a beggar, but also like a fierce bandit among beggars. This guy seems to have no moral values at all. Basically, I only listen to Su Chen's words. He will do whatever Su Chen asks him to do. Even if it's for him to rob, he won't have any ambiguity. Su Chen politely parted ways with Su Mang, and then took the initiative to introduce himself. The middle-aged woman slightly relaxed her guard, although she still felt somewhat unwilling to entertain these 2 beggars. However, in the end, she still gave way to a door and let the 2 people in. Su Mang was amazed. Seeing everything is a big fuss. And Su Chen also looked around at the environment. There was a TV, but he couldn't tell what brand it was. It was a black and white TV. When he was in mainland China, he couldn't even think about it. Private individuals are not allowed to purchase televisions these days. Su Chen still remembers that around 78 years ago, the price of a TV was around 10,000 yuan. Later, the price of televisions plummeted due to the large price reductions offered by TV merchants in China to compete for the market. The price of televisions has been directly reduced from 10,000 to 1,000. However, at that time, although the price of televisions plummeted, the core technology was from island countries. The real profit is still made by the island countries. My cousin has a TV in Xiangjiang, which indicates that he is still doing well. Of course, this is also relatively good. In this era, among the lower-class citizens of Xiangjiang, it was quite decent. Compared to the big shots, my cousin is far behind. Although Su Chen had assets of millions in his previous life, in reality, the company's valuation had already exceeded 1 billion. Starting from sales, from students to white-collar workers, and then to domineering female CEOs. Su Chen also had a clear understanding. I have been reading countless women for a long time, so I naturally know what to say to please women. In just a few words, the aunt's smile bloomed. Aunt Biao's name is Song Yanqing, and she is almost 40 years old. She has a plump figure and a straight face, often revealing a hint of Sun Yang's aging charm. Auntie, when will my cousin come home? Su Chen sat on the sofa and asked. Song Yanqing casually brought 2 green pears and handed them to Su Chen and Su Mang, shaking her head. I can't say for sure, sometimes I'll be back in the morning and afternoon, and sometimes it might be the late night, she said. Su Chen asked curiously, what does my cousin do? Song Yanqing smiled and said, it's not a great job, working on the set. Su Chen smiled and said, are you an actor? Song Yanqing smiled slightly and nodded, saying, occasionally making a guest appearance as an actor, also serving as a lamplighter, and even as a dragon and tiger martial arts master. Your uncle is still capable of handling things with ease. At this point, Song Yanqing suddenly paused slightly before continuing, Aiken, have you ever learned Kung Fu? I heard your cousin say that in your village, people learn Kung Fu. Ah Chen's Kung Fu is not good. He has been weak and sickly since childhood, and he can't even practice Kung Fu. Our family only teaches him how to nourish qi, breathe and breathe. If we really look at Kung Fu, it still depends on my Kung Fu. Su Mang said while gnawing on a pear, I practice Xingyi fist. Later, a master taught me Bagua palm, and I practice Neijia fist. Generally speaking, Su Mang intentionally wanted to show off his abilities. He raised his hand and slapped it on the coffee table in front of him. With a click, the coffee table in front of me immediately shattered into pieces. Song Yanqing's face was already somewhat ugly. Ah Mang. Su Chen patted his forehead and said, what are you doing? Do you think you're in the production team? Su Mang shrunk his neck and awkwardly said, Aunt Biao, I'm sorry, Auntie, this is how Mang is. He's not bad in nature, he just likes to show off. Before, he was the main force in our production team, and one person could fight around 10. Su Chen smiled. Yes. Su Mang patted his chest and said, Auntie, if anyone bullies you, tell me, I promise he doesn't even know his own mother. Alright, it's hard to say. Song Yanqing shook her head, but she could also see that Su Mang was also a simple child. She slowly spoke up and said, I'll have to buy a coffee table later. Su Chen found it funny, but he didn't explain it either. Su Mang is a guy with great strength. According to the memory of the original owner of his body, he has never lost in fights, whether it's solo or group fights. This guy is always invincible. However, it is rare to get injured. It is said that this is the footwork of Bagua palm. Anyway, Su Chen has been studying for a long time but hasn't learned it yet, while Su Mang can achieve the level of self-taught. Su Chen and Su Mang's parents have a good relationship with their cousins, but by the time their ancestors passed away, Xiangjiang's cousin had very little contact with them. During the conversation, the key outside the door rang and the sound of opening the door was heard. Su Chen thought it was his cousin who had returned, but who knew that the person entering was a boy around 14 years old and a 12-year-old girl. Chapter 4. Manga Talent, No Need for It. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Manga Talent, No Need for It. Su Chen asked, "Are these two children?" Xiangjiang quickly greeted and said, "Xiaoyang, Xiao Shui, this is your father's nephew from his hometown. Come and say hello soon." Cousin Su Qiliang, who was very thin and wore thick-framed glasses, was in high school and was in the rebellious period. He snorted and lazily walked into his own room. Xiangjiang's face changed and she felt a bit unhappy. As a child, she had been used to it too much since childhood. And cousin Su Qiliang, obviously inheriting her mother's excellent genes, gave birth to a pink and tender, pretty and cute, with a chubby little face with a hint of baby fat. She is currently in elementary school and very shy. "Hello cousin." After obediently greeting Xiangjiang in front of the two, she quickly hid behind her mother, feeling a bit scared and afraid to talk to them. "Xiaoling is very cute," Su Chen smiled slightly. For rebellious teenagers like Su Qiliang, Su Chen didn't want to pay attention, and his current thoughts were also very simple. Just hurry up and cash out your comic talent. Otherwise, the days ahead will be really tough. Time waits for no one. Hutchison Trading Company, Kowloon Warehouse Battle, Second Oil Crisis. These are extremely critical time points. As long as you can grasp these time points, it is definitely not a problem to climb to the sky and become a person directly. But now I can only temporarily rely on others. It's okay, we're all treated like beggars. If we rely on others, we'll rely on them. Su Chen didn't say much nonsense, he was still very diligent. Xiangjiang took the initiative to go to the market and bought meat for the two people. The food was prepared. But we can only wait. In the evening, my cousin Su Yoshin did not come back, so they had to move their chopsticks in advance. After finishing the meal, my cousin Su Yoshin returned in the dark. My cousin Su Yoshin, 45 years old, fled to Xiangjiang during a difficult period 15 years ago. Even at a young age, he is a bit handsome and has a very calm demeanor. As soon as Su Yoshin entered the door, he explained to Xiangjiang, "The filming tasks of the crew are too tight, there's really no time to leave." When Su Chen and Su Mang were seen, Su Yoshin was also slightly surprised. It took a long time to recognize Su Chen and Su Mang. "You are Ah Chen. I remember when you were a child, I hugged you and in the blink of an eye, you were so big. How many years and how old are you?" Su Yoshin recognized Su Chen at a glance and asked in surprise. "Uncle, just turned 17 years old," Su Chen said. "Xiaomang, what about you?" Su Yoshin continued to ask. "Hehe, I'm 2 years older than Ah Chen, 19 years old, Su Mang said proudly. "It's getting late." My cousin Su Yoshin didn't mention the matter of helping Su Chen and Su Mang find jobs for the time being. He only mentioned that he had just arrived in Xiangjiang and would like to familiarize himself with the environment in the next few days, while also buying a few new clothes. After a busy day at work and chatting for a while, Su Yoshin couldn't hold on anymore and quickly went back to the house to sleep. On the contrary, Su Mang looked around and was clearly very excited. However, after receiving Su Chen's request, he honestly began to rest. Later, Su Mang sat cross-legged in silence, but his breathing began to become longer. This is a breathing technique taught to him by one of his masters. Specially increased strength. Su Mang hardly needs to sleep at night, just spending his time breathing and breathing. Su Chen has also learned this breathing technique, but his talent is average and he cannot learn it no matter how he learns it. So I gave up. He only knows shallow breathing techniques, and treating breathing techniques like sleeping is like dreaming. Damn it, are you talented and amazing. I have a system. Su Chen muttered to himself. Low-rent housing is very small, and as there are many people, sleeping becomes very troublesome. The master bedroom has a slightly larger area, with Su Yoxin and Song Yanqing sleeping, and the other bedroom is a double bed, which is the room for Su Qiliang and Su Qiling siblings. And Su Chen and Su Mang naturally slept in the living room. A room is probably less than 10 square meters in size. Su Chen simply tidied up the floor and paved it. Under the night, everything was silent. Su Mang's breathing was continuous, but it had an excellent hypnotic effect. On a night in Xiangjiang, Su Chen slept soundly. For the next period of time, Su Chen and Su Mang still moved out of their uncle's house. Su Yoxin borrowed 500 yuan to the two of them, and they rented a house of over 10 square meters next door as neighbors. In addition, Su Yoxin arranged work for the two people. Simply put, it means acting in groups on the set. Be a dragon and tiger warrior. Nowadays, wireless stations also have their own wireless artist training courses, but they require payment and also waste time. The best way is to start with the dragon and tiger warriors. Give too much money. Su Chen's monthly salary is only 100, while Su Mang is slightly better than Su Chen by 150. Holding this 100 yuan, Su Chen couldn't help but curse. The wireless station is really his mother mean. During this period, their aunt Song Yanqing accompanied them to the registered residence department to apply for ID cards. The process of obtaining the certificate went smoothly. After submitting the photos, I registered my personal basic information, and with the guarantee of a local person, I paid some money and could wait for the certificate to be issued. Of course, there aren't many such good things. By October next year, the policies of the Xiangjiang government will undergo changes. In order to easily obtain the Xiangjiang ID card in the future, one must live in Xiangjiang for more than 7 years, have a legal job, and have 3 Xiangjiang people as guarantees. It's easier now, but in the future, it's uncertain. After receiving his ID card, Su Mang was very excited and trembled like a precious treasure, as if this was a guarantee of his bright future. So, this guy lost his ID card on the same day. A group of people helped to find it for a long time, only to find that he left his ID card at the counter of the registered residence department and forgot to take it away. In the blink of an eye, a month has passed. Su Chen looked at the 100 yuan he had in his hand and felt like he wanted to cry without tears. To be honest, it wasn't as tiring to earn money in my past life. Work, I'm not going. In February, when Su Mang pulled Su Chen to continue on the set, Su Chen refused. Why? Su Mang scratched his head and said, previously, Director Huang had said that he wanted me to become a regular actor on TVB and earn 300 yuan a month. Speaking of which, Su Mang's martial arts talent has been recognized. As for Su Chen, it's true that he doesn't have acting skills, and he doesn't have time or effort. Naturally, he's not as good as Su Mang. At least, Su Mang's image can still play a villain. Mang, listen to me and don't sign the contract. Su Chen took a deep breath and said, now that I have money, I just want to do something I want to do. What's going on? Su Mang is a bit strange. You'll know then. Su Chen smiled and continued, 100 a month, 300 a month. The money is too little, I need to write and find ways to earn more. Okay, Chen, I can trust you. Su Chen's so-called way of getting rich is naturally through drawing comics. At least this is also an S-level talent given to oneself by the system. With this thing, it is enough to establish oneself in the Xiangjiang River. Chapter 5. Dragon Ball. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 Dragon Ball, 100 yuan. Enough to buy a lot of drawing paper for oneself. The main tools can basically be assembled. Originally, Su Chen could also directly ask his cousin Su Yoxin for some money. However, after some thought, Su Chen still cut off this idea. My cousin is doing well, but the relationship between the two parties is still not good enough. Moreover, my cousin is already very generous in finding jobs for himself and Su Mang. I still borrowed 500 yuan, which would be a bit unreasonable if I were borrowing money. In a cheap rental house at this moment, Su Chen was sitting on the sofa, legs crossed, gazing at a manga newspaper called Little Rogue that his younger cousin Su Qiliang had taken from his bedroom. This is also the predecessor of the future-renowned Dragon and Tiger Gate in Asia. Of course, Little Rogue from this era is still as eye-catching as it was later. Everything looks very cliché. Xiangjiang Comics is naturally very backward. Overall, Xiangjiang Comics has been greatly influenced by Meimang. Su Chen put away the comic magazine Little Rogue, later known as Dragon and Tiger Gate, and had a rough idea in his mind. Xiangjiang Comics of this era. It can be described as terrible and unbearable. If we were to compare, Su Chen actually felt that it was a little stronger than the Rampage comics over 30 years later. The current Hong Kong man culture is far inferior to its peak period in the 1980s and 1990s. Su Chen doesn't go to work. I started researching comics instead. Ah Chen, are you studying comics? Su Mang stayed on the set for a day and upon returning, he found that Su Chen was reading comics. Su Chen nodded slightly, then smiled and said, "Look at these comics. What's so nice about a fight between villains?" Su Mang snorted and said with a hint of disdain, "It's better to be from our village, fighting to the point of meat. That's the way to enjoy it." Su Chen just smiled and casually said, "It's just that you don't understand it. It's called comics, it's very interesting." Generally, students in Xiangjiang like to buy a comic newspaper to read, and the audience is also large. Some workers often buy it for entertainment. Su Chen patiently explained. "It's really strange. How could the people of Xiangjiang like to watch these little people fight? I feel bored. If I were in the village, fighting would be straightforward, punching each other in the face, it would be so satisfying." Su Mang was very strange and took the opportunity to bring the little rascal over to take a look. In no time, Su Mang became fascinated by it. Su Chen did not point it out, allowing Su Mang to read all of this issue of the comic weekly newspaper. Until the end, Su Mang suddenly regained his senses, his eyes lit up, and he said incoherently, "Ah. Ah Chen, this kind of villain is really beautiful. He also has unparalleled martial arts skills, such as the Golden Bell Mask and the dragon subduing 18 legs. Where is the next episode? I still want to see it. I really have you. Even half of a manga can be so fascinating." Su Chen smiled dumbfounded and casually found one among a pile of comics, throwing it to Su Mang. "Look at these comics. In the morning, I asked my aunt for them." Speaking of which, Su Chen added, "By the way, I remember the latest episode was secretly stuffed into his backpack by his younger cousin Su Qiliang. How could that be? I just became interested in watching it. Where can I buy the rest?" Su Mang asked anxiously. After thinking for a moment, Su Chen said, "I guess you'll have to go buy other newspapers and magazines. If you really want to keep reading, go buy a comic book directly. There are also many serialized issues in it, which is much more cost-effective than comic newspapers and magazines." "How much does a book cost approximately?" Su Mang heard that it was going to cost money and carefully asked with a flick of his fingers. "A newspaper costs about 2 yuan, while a comic book is a bit more expensive, around 7 or 8 yuan, Su Chen remembered very clearly. "I only have a few dollars left." Upon hearing these words, Su Mang sat back on the sofa feeling disappointed and stopped eagerly asking for any comics to read. Upon seeing this, Su Chen smiled. He had already prepared a pen and paper to start drawing comics. At least this is also a skill given to oneself by the system. During these 2 days, Su Chen did not rush to start writing, but patiently examined the market. Most importantly, he wanted to see how the market for this comic was going. Xiangjiang Comics is a large market. The system allowed me to start from scratch and earn a full 1 million, but this difficulty is still present. However, since I have been given the talent for comics, I must make good use of it. First, make 1 million and see what the system gives me. 1 million is not a big problem, the main problem is how to rise up with the trend. Su Chen pondered in his heart, the safest route is real estate. The future of Xiangjiang, every inch of land is worth every penny. Su Chen fell into thought, and the question was what he wanted to draw. Originally, Su Chen wanted to draw some well-known superhero comics, such as One Piece, Hokage, and Beidou Divine Fist, which could influence an era's epic-level comic works. Because of these creativity and ideas, they are too advanced for the current Xiangjiang. The main focus of Xiangjiang is still on martial arts, highlighting a realistic issue. However, the problem is that there are too many. Island country comics have not yet risen, which one is plagiarized. For example, ninjutsu, pirate, and apocalypse are all very obscure, but they all have each other's powerful charm. We can definitely guarantee that after being released, there will be a huge sales. 7 Dragon Balls. Su Chen's eyes suddenly lit up. The story of the 7 Dragon Balls revolves around the 7 Dragon Balls. Starting from Sun Wukong, who lived in the deep mountains, he accidentally met the genius and beautiful scientist Bulma. Until the Battle of Baek, the introduction of the concept of the universe, and the launch of the Scion, Fleisa, Saru, and the Demon Buo, it is widely recognized as a masterpiece by the world. Even after completion, the sales of Dragon Ball, whether in comics or anime, are among the top 10 in Japan. This is a top-notch work that undoubtedly influences an era. With a slight thought, Su Chen began to write. Firstly, there is Sun Wukong, who is young, and adult. He simulates the Super Series. Super Series 2. Is it really an S.level skill? Su Chen's speed in drawing comics is also extremely fast. Soon, a simple character diagram was drawn. Su Chen began to think about the issue of storyboarding again. After a brief recollection, countless details of the 7 Dragon Ball immediately came to Su Chen's mind. Storyboard Xiangjiang Comics did not have the idea of storyboarding, but with the mastery of S.level comic skills, Su Chen naturally mastered this skill. Next, the first part. Chapter 6. Little Rogue. Dragon and Tiger Gate. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Little Rogue. Dragon and Tiger Gate. The painting technique of Bird Mountain Brightness is excellent, and simple depictions can create a sense of immersion for readers who come from within. Moreover, the experience and visuals are extremely strong, and Akira Toriyama has been crowned as a manga master in Japan. With a determined mind, Su Chen immediately began to take action. Anyway, he remembers all the contents of the 7 Dragon Balls clearly in his heart, and when he takes action, he is naturally familiar with the road and is very confident. Bird Mountain Ming's masterpiece, the 7 Dragon Ball, was skillfully drawn by Su Chen. Every detail was taken into consideration by this comic master to the extreme. He doesn't even need to add any embellishments. He's just a simple mountain boy who doesn't understand common sense and meets a beautiful girl named Bulma who comes to search for the Dragon Ball. Then, a series of exciting and excellent adventure stories unfolded around the Dragon Ball. Su Chen became busy and made rapid progress. As a typical manga artist, each chapter of content needs to be drawn for at least a month. But Su Chen, surprisingly, it only took half an hour to finish a chapter. He didn't even feel any fatigue, but instead became more and more energetic, writing like flying. Su Chen knew that the system had given him an S.level talent, allowing him to easily outline it. Su Mang tossed and turned on the side, repeatedly watching the little rascal. In the evening, the sky gradually darkened. Su Qiliang and Su Qiling's siblings returned home from school. Su Qiling obediently and cleverly greeted Su Chen and Su Mang, and then sat happily on the sofa, watching the TV. Su Qiling didn't lift his head and crawled into the bedroom without looking up. Not long after, little cousin Su Qiling suddenly let out an angry roar in his bedroom. Where are the dozen or so little rogue comics that I have worked hard to collect? Which bastard stole them? Next door. Su Mang put down the comic in his hand and looked at Su Chen in confusion. Little rascal, is this thing in my hand? It should be. Su Chen raised his eyes slightly and then spoke lightly. It seems that our little cousin is angry. Dong dong dong. At this moment, a sudden sound of smashing the door came from outside the door. Open the door, quickly open the door for me. Su Qiling spoke angrily. Su Mang opened the door. Su Qiling immediately jumped in and said, "You, how dare you steal the comic I bought? You're crazy, mainland guy." His voice had just fallen, and he was immediately picked up by Su Mang as if he were picking on a chick. "Oh my, you." Su Qiling's face turned red with anger and he struggled, but how could he be Su Mang's opponent? "Ah Mang, let him down." Su Chen smiled. Su Qiling fell down, but his face was extremely unpleasant. Su Chen smiled and continued, "All right, Ollie, come in." Although Su Qiling was unhappy in his heart, he still walked in honestly. "I was wrong to take your comics without authorization." Su Chen apologized and slowly spoke up, "No, your comics are all here." The muscles on Su Qiling's face trembled. Compared to Su Mang, who had a reckless expression on his face, Su Qiling was clearly more wary of Su Chen, who smiled like a spring breeze. "Don't look at Su Chen, he's silent." However, Su Qiling did have a feeling that his cousin was difficult to deal with. "All right, take a look, are there any problems with these comics?" Su Chen smiled slightly. Su Qiling quickly opened these comics. Seeing that there were no issues, I breathed a sigh of relief. At least it was also my own collection, and surprisingly, all of it was taken away by Su Chen. This is what I have worked hard to collect. You should know that now a regular comic magazine in Xiangjiang costs 2 yuan. Su Qiling's monthly allowance is only 5 yuan. To save up every issue that must be followed, it is indeed necessary to have a considerable amount of capital to save up so many comic newspapers and magazines. I definitely don't spend a penny recklessly on my daily life. Especially, he also had a love letter stuffed into a comic, which would have been a lot of fun if Su Chen had discovered it. If Su Chen finds out, tell Song Yanqing that he really doesn't want to live anymore. Also, if you like girls, speak up openly. Su Chen smiled and said nonchalantly, "Keep it hidden, girls won't like you either. I want you to take care of me." Su Qiling couldn't help but speak angrily after being poked into his mind. "You sneaked into my room and took my comic book. Do you still have any reason?" Su Chen shrugged and then spoke faintly, "Do you really like comics?" Su Qiling couldn't help but be slightly taken aback, but he didn't expect that Su Chen would suddenly say such a sentence without a head or mind. "It's okay, isn't it?" Su Qiling couldn't help but say, "What are you saying about this?" "This is my latest manga, take a look." Su Chen casually handed a piece of paper to Su Qiling and said with a smile, "How did you draw it?" Su Qiling was momentarily taken aback and then took the manuscript. Upon opening it, I couldn't help but be stunned. Dragon Ball, Sun Wukong. Childhood, Youth, Adulthood, Mimetic Super Series, Super Series. Hush. Just looking at this art style, Su Qiling couldn't help but take a cold breath. This is actually an extremely smooth comic sketch. A long, long time ago, there was an ancient legend that there were 7 round balls called Dragon Balls scattered throughout the world. As long as the 7 Dragon Balls were gathered and a spell was recited, a divine dragon could be summoned, and any wish could be fulfilled for the wishing person. Sun Wukong, who lived in the deep mountains, was highly skilled. By chance, he followed the genius scientist Burma out of the mountains and began to search for the 7 Dragon Balls scattered around the world. During this period, he also met lascivious Gui Xianren and Wulong, Yamu Cha who blushed at the sight of women, and arrogant monk Shaolin and other companions. He not only experienced various adventures, but also sparked a series of hilarious stories. Although Su Chen's manga skills are not at the highest level of SSS, S level is also a rare standard in the world, not to mention the world's top level, but definitely not inferior. Moreover, he is accustomed to grinding and imitating paintings, such as the master-level painting of Akira Toriyama. With his unforgettable talent, he has completely achieved an astonishing level of 9% resemblance. In the current Xiangjiang, many meteor comics are very impressive, with rough drawing techniques that are inferior to children's paintings 30 years later. Most of them use violence and sentimentality to attract readers to watch and follow up. Even the young hooligans who are at the peak of their lives cannot avoid entering the countryside as a common custom. Driven by the plot, a large amount of content with themes of fighting, violence, and pornography is constantly interspersed. And it is precisely these bottomless things that attract a large number of young people with sufficient purchasing power to voluntarily pay for the purchase of small rogue newspapers and magazines. Su Qiuliang couldn't help but ponder over it. Chapter 7. One Man, Two Brothers. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Su Qiuliang was shocked. He really didn't expect that the seemingly useless cousin in front of him would be so powerful. Just by looking at it, he felt completely drawn in. A very common child in the mountains is called Monkey King, which is the same as the name of Monkey King, the protagonist of Journey to the West in traditional Chinese literature and the Monkey King who caused havoc in heaven. They all have tails, possess high strength, and can also block the amazing killing power of bullets. There is also a beautiful scientist named Bulma, who has a charming appearance and likes boys very much. Her personality has a hint of color and is very cunning. After learning about Wukong's strength and the futility of wanting the 4-star Dragon Ball, he began to actively tempt Wukong to touch her little buttocks in order to achieve his goal. As the eldest lady with the world's richest person, Burma's only wish is to have Dragon Ball find a satisfactory prince charming for her. As Su Qiuliang watched, his heart gradually merged into the world of Dragon Ball. Fantasizing that one day I will also enter the world of the 7 Dragon Balls, acquire the same skills as Wukong, punish evil people, and win the hearts of countless beautiful women. It's best if Burma also marries herself. Su Qiuliang became more and more moved as he watched. It was so wonderful, especially the beautiful painter. The images of Sun Wukong and Bulma, as if they were real, came into view. Compared to the mainstream faction of Xiangjiang now, it's like a handsome prince, comparing himself to a guy who is extremely ugly and has a sleazy temperament. The gap is too big, the chasm between fireflies and the bright moon. Even Su Qiuliang didn't know how to describe it. After about 10 minutes, he finally finished reading the comic with satisfaction until he flipped through the last page and realized it was a blank space. Su Qiuliang couldn't help but feel a sense of emptiness in his heart, feeling very disappointed and saying, why hasn't there been any more in the future? Without reading the next Dragon Ball comic, Su Qiuliang felt like a kitten scratching its itch in his heart, extremely eager to know the next plot. However, Su Chen crossed his legs and spoke calmly, how about it, Ali? From your perspective, can this comic be popular? Su Qiuliang licked his mouth. He was currently in a rebellious period of youth, but one thing was that he was very familiar with comics. He has loved reading comics since he was young, and it can be said that he has a strong interest, imagination, and appreciation ability in the field of comics. But when Su Qiuliang grew tired of the various martial arts, adventures, revenge, adventures, invincibility, and other mundane routines in Xiangjiang's comics, it was as ordinary as water. But it couldn't help but shine in front of Su Chen's painting of the 7 Dragon Balls. Cousin, I think this comic is definitely going to become popular. Xiangjiang said here and then suddenly realized, cousin, did you draw this? Su Chen nodded slightly and then spoke lightly, well, just like it. Cousin, are you planning to publish this thing? Asked Xiangjiang. You're right. Su Chen nodded slightly and then spoke lightly, I'm planning to find a comic book company to submit, but I haven't figured out who to look for yet. That must be going to find Huang Yulang. Xiangjiang spoke quickly, now his manga is the most popular manga in the entire Xiangjiang. Huang Yulang. Su Chen remained silent for a moment, then nodded and said, I know this guy, but I'm not in a hurry now. Don't worry. Xiangjiang hesitated slightly and said, what does that mean? Negotiating with others always requires chips. Su Chen looked at Xiangjiang with a smile and then casually said, if you want to sell what you have at a high price, you need some means. All right. At this point, Su Chen shrugged and spoke nonchalantly, don't disturb me during this time. I'll try to finish drawing all these words. So, cousin, can I see it at a glance? Xiangjiang approached with a playful smile. No. Su Chen simply refused. Cousin. Xiangjiang spoke in a long tone, just let me see for a moment. Ah Mang. Su Chen glanced at Su Mang and then spoke calmly, see off. Hey, cousin, cousin. Xiangjiang was still shouting, and he was already lifted up by Su Mang, as if grabbing a chick and throwing it directly at the entrance. Hee, Ah Chen, you're really amazing. Xiangjiang used to dislike us, but now he's obedient to you. Hearing the commotion outside the door, Su Mang couldn't help but chuckle. It's just a child. Su Chen smiled and then spoke casually, just educate a rebellious child. Su Mang laughed and then looked at Su Chen as he spoke quickly, Ah Chen, are you really planning to find that Huang Yulang to submit your manuscript? I still know about Huang Yulang. Su Chen shrugged and spoke slowly, however, it's not that easy to find him to submit articles. This guy is now considered the pillar of the Xiangjiang comic industry, and he's extremely stingy. It's not that easy to deal with. Speaking of which, Su Chen smiled and said, if I want to make a lot of money, I can't rely solely on this guy. So. Su Mang looked at Su Chen with a puzzled expression on his face. What should we do? Step by step, take a look, first draw the comic in your hand. Su Chen slightly moved his muscles and bones, and there was a crackling sound when he shipped the goods. Then he looked up at Su Mang and said, by the way, how much money do you still have on you? Including the money my uncle gave me, I still have less than 400 yuan. Su Mang said honestly. Give it all to me. Su Chen smiled and slowly spoke up, I need to use it these days. Su Mang was not polite at all. He flipped through all the money in his pocket and gave it to Su Chen, saying, a total of 400 yuan. Although this guy is 2 years older than Su Chen, he treats Su Chen obediently. The relationship between the two is also excellent. Sometimes Su Chen couldn't help but think, what would this guy do if he hadn't crossed the river and fell into the sea and drowned? Go to the construction site to move bricks, or go to the dock to carry bags. Enough. Su Chen nodded slightly and continued, if the problem is not serious, I can earn a sum of money back in the next few days. I'll give it back to you then. What else, our brothers are all the same. Su Mang chuckled and said, don't mention the money. You're right. Su Chen looked at Su Mang with a smile and said, I won't treat you unfairly. Chapter 8. Buddha requires gold attire, and people require clothing. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Another month's time. Su Chen has also been working hard during this period, drawing comics every day. I arrived at the world's top martial arts competition in one breath. A month. Su Chen looked at herself in the mirror and found that her face had already grown fine hairs. Scrape off the beard on your face casually. Make your somewhat childish face mature. Gently patted the cheek. Su Chen took another 400 yuan and walked out of the room, staying indoors for a month, making Su Chen look a bit haggard. However, at this moment, Su Chen did not care about these things, but went straight to the dress shop in Kowloon. "Boss." Su Chen walked in and spoke casually. "How do you call this gentleman?" The shop owner glanced at Su Chen. Although he felt that Su Chen's clothes were a bit shabby, he didn't dare to neglect them. "Su Chen." Su Chen simply said his name. "I'm here to choose a suit." "Choose a suit." The shop owner looked up and down at Su Chen and said, "This suit is not cheap." "How much is it if it's not cheap?" Su Chen didn't care at all and asked casually. 200 yuan. The shop owner also spoke directly. In this era, 200 yuan is almost equivalent to a person's monthly salary, and most people have no intention of spending 200 yuan to buy a suit. Not bad, the price is reasonable. Su Chen casually took out 200 yuan from his pocket and delivered it directly to the shop owner, saying, "Give me a suit, I want it now." The shop owner was somewhat stunned and quickly spoke up, "Okay, sir, please wait a moment." Subsequently, he skillfully took out a ruler and measured Su Chen inch by inch, saying, "Sir, your figure is relatively thin. We do have a few suitable suits here, but it will take some time to modify them, which will take an hour. What do you think? Then let's make some changes. It must fit my figure." Su Chen thought for a moment and spoke up, "Can you come over and let me see?" The shop owner then brought a few suits. Su Chen just glanced a few times and then directly chose a light gray suit, shirt, vest, and leather shoes. After a simple test, the cuffs were a bit loose. Su Chen dropped 100 yuan as a deposit and then inquired, "By the way, is there a place to cut hair here?" Some, it's nearby." The shop owner pointed in a direction. "Okay, I'll go get a haircut and come back later." Su Chen spoke lightly, "It's better to have time." Later, Su Chen simply saw another hair and cut off all the excess hair on both sides, leaving only the middle. However, he looked much more energetic. When she returned, Su Chen was already in a suit and leather shoes, and casually took the leather shoes handed over by the shop owner. Su Chen's overall temperament suddenly underwent a earth-shattering change. In his past life, Su Chen could already be considered a successful person. At this moment, standing here makes the shop owner feel a little stunned. "Sir, are you Manager Hua from the Ocean Company?" The muscles at the corner of Su Chen's mouth tugged slightly, neither agreeing nor denying, just looking at himself in the mirror. "Damn it, it seems even more handsome than in my past life. Do you have a watch?" Su Chen glanced at the shop owner. "Another expenditure of 100 yuan. This is a second-hand watch, it's a plum blossom." Anyway, before traveling, Su Chen had never heard of this brand of watch in the world. However, at this time, he had to wear it to match his own outfit. The genuine plum blossom is definitely not worth such a little money. Getting a second-hand one now is also a good way to dress comfortably. Besides, Su Chen also bought an extra wallet. In short, all the attire makes you look like a successful person. In this way, there isn't much left of 400 yuan. However, when Su Chen walked out, his whole person also underwent a earth-shattering change. "Sir, your clothes." The shop owner ran out with Su Chen's old clothes. "Lost it. It's boring." Su Chen dropped a sentence and turned around to leave. The shop owner couldn't help but be stunned, and then casually threw Su Chen's old clothes into the trash can. "These clothes are indeed torn and dirty. Wearing these garbage clothes on the set, I don't know how many corpses I've portrayed. It's strange if they look good." In addition, Su Chen has been wearing them for a while and doesn't know how to wash them. The sour smell almost makes people vomit on the spot. Su Chen didn't feel sorry, so he took a taxi and headed straight to the Jade Emperor's court. "Taxi, as early as the 1920s, had already been used on Xiangjiang Island and was introduced to Kowloon in 1926. At that time, taxis only had 3 to 4 seats, and the charging methods were divided into 2 types. Bargaining based on time and distance, and charging based on a meter. Before the Japanese colonial period in 1941, taxis were usually waiting at various ferry terminals and hotel entrances. If you needed to take a taxi elsewhere, you had to call the taxi company first. After the war, the number of taxis increased on a large scale. In 1947, the number of registered and licensed taxis was 329, and the following year it gradually increased to 344. By 1957, it had doubled to 693, and by 1959, it had significantly increased to 851. In 1960, the number of taxis exceeded 1,000 to 1026, and since then, there has been an increasing trend every year. In 1965, 1967, and 1973, the number of taxis increased to 2536, 3649, and 4754, respectively, surpassing the numbers of 2,000, 3,000, and 4,000. In 1977, the registration number exceeded 6,203 vehicles, in 1981 it reached 11,061 vehicles, and from 1984 to 15,984 vehicles. Since the 1990s, the government has tightened license issuance, and the growth has further slowed down. Since 1998, it has been maintained at 18,138 vehicles to this day. The taxi industry in Xiangjiang is still very developed. The Jade Emperor Dynasty in Chaiwan District. Su Qin said calmly as he sat in the car. Xiangjiang East District, also known as Chaiwan, is located in the area east of Shaoquan. The area east of Xinghua Estate and Taitam Road. The eastern part of Chaiwan, east of Wingtai Road, is generally known as Shaoxiwan. Su Qin sat calmly in the car, as if he was wandering in the sky, but his whole body gave a feeling of being invisible. The taxi driver watched as Su Qin closed his eyes and remained silent, only secretly speculating about his identity. With such a large aura, this person's identity is probably quite remarkable. Of course, he didn't know that Su Qin, this guy, has also been able to nourish his energy for many years. The aura of his past life, combined with the tempering during this period, has caused a tremendous change in his overall temperament. Chapter 9. Playing Tiger and Eating Pig. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The taxi driver drove all the way to Gangwon Jia Street. And Su Qin also gave Huang Yulang's information over in his mind. In the Xiangjiang comic industry, Huang Yulang is bound to be mentioned. Arrived in Hong Kong at the age of 7, dropped out of school at the age of 13, and helped people draw comics. This person has started a business and has suffered repeated failures and battles. For the first time starting a business, I lost all my money with my father's 1,000 yuan. For the second time starting a business, I ran out of savings and ended up losing everything. Fortunately, I was able to save my life by drawing comics for others. For the third time starting a business, I did not succeed in my graduation. Due to financial difficulties, I sold the publishing house to Huang Guang, the owner of Beoguang Publishing House. However, the sales of Hooligans have been steadily increasing, and Fui Publishing has sold out, becoming the treasure of the publishing house. In 1971, he secretly planned another small rogue book and founded his own Yulang Book Company, breaking away from Huang Guang's Beoguang Publishing House. In order to prepare funds, 6 issues of Little Rogue were published in the first month after the new company opened, with 2 issues published each time. In October 1975, the government of Xiangjiang officially passed the Illegal Publications Act, and the police sent personnel to book and newspaper stalls to crack down on and arrest people, with a momentum that seemed to drive out comics. And Huang Yulang actually invited colleagues to discuss countermeasures in this situation. Launching a self-discipline movement, stopping the publication of pornographic books, and holding a press conference to inquire about the standards of bad publications, with the government have actually squeezed out some colleagues. With this opportunity, Huang Yulang can also be considered as the dominant family. Now that Longhu Gate is at its peak, Shangguan Xiaobao and Huangguang are beginning to decline. Nowadays, Huang Yulang is quite ambitious and ready to put in more effort to join the comic industry. This guy is ambitious, I'm afraid it's not that easy to deal with. He's deceiving his partners, deceiving his father, and has great ambition. He will do whatever it takes to achieve his goals. Su Chen thought to himself, however, I'm not in a hurry either. Let's take a look first. If cooperation with Huang Yulang fails, this person will also be their competitor. Su Chen's usual routine. Be sure to investigate your potential opponents carefully. A comprehensive investigation. Understanding the opponent's personality and conduct is the only truly beneficial action for oneself. Sir, here we are, the taxi driver spoke politely. Okay, I got it. Su Chen nodded slightly and casually threw the driver 5 yuan before getting off the car. This place is much more bustling than Kowloon district. There are countless tall buildings on both sides of the road, and the street billboards are also very new, with a variety of contents and distinctive features. On the street, there are bustling cars and pedestrians passing by like clouds and smoke, creating a bustling atmosphere of a metropolis. To be honest, generally speaking, it is completely incomparable to the demon in 40 years. At best, this month is at the level of a small county in the 3rd or 4th tier. However, we cannot ignore the era. Now it's 1978. There was a hint of excitement in Su Chen's eyes. This is a barbaric era, as well as an era of pioneers. As long as you are excellent enough, you can definitely climb to the sky in one step. But now, it's still 78 years. Jade Emperor Dynasty. Su Chen walked in slowly, while his gaze was also examining the surrounding environment. How to put it, it still looks somewhat magnificent. There is a luxurious taste. Huang Yulang, who grew up in poverty, now looks like a nouveau riche. Su Chen secretly commented in his heart. On his face, he couldn't see any unnecessary emotional fluctuations. Sir, may I ask who you are looking for? As Su Chen walked in, a receptionist greeted him very politely. Not to mention anything else, just looking at Su Chen's suit and shiny leather shoes, one can tell that he is a pampered person, and she naturally dare not neglect him. Xiangjiang is very small and very big. Although Huang Yulang has gained a lot of fame now, he is not considered a member of the upper-class society. Has there already been a front desk lady in this era? Su Chen's heart was slightly puzzled, but there were no unnecessary emotional fluctuations on his face. I'm looking for Mr. Huang Yulang, the chairman of the Jade Emperor Court. Sir, may I ask your surname? Do you have an appointment? Said the receptionist politely. Do we still need to make an appointment for this special code third-rate product? Su Chen snorted coldly and spoke lightly, just tell him directly and tell me that Su Chen is looking for him. Su Chen. The receptionist didn't dare to neglect and hurriedly went to report. Not even a phone call. Su Chen wrinkled his nose. After a moment, a young shirt walked toward Su Chen, and a young man in his 20s stood in front of him, asking, Mr. Su Chen. Do you know me? Su Chen tilted his head and looked at the young shirt. No, I don't know Mr. Su, but just now Xiaoyu told me, your name is Su Chen. Su Chen just snorted and spoke lightly, who are you again? The young man in the shirt smiled politely and said with a proud tone, just because I am Qi Wenjie, the eldest disciple of Mr. Huang, at the age of 22, I can color the Dragon and Tiger Gate. Even a few of the latest paintings of the Dragon and Tiger Gate were drawn by me. I don't know. Su Chen said simply. Qi Wenjie choked at once. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. The scene was once very awkward, and Su Chen's portrayal of the wealthy second generation also left Qi Wenjie speechless. The guy in front of him was dressed in a suit and leather shoes, with a watch on his wrist. Although he didn't know what brand it was, just a glance revealed that Su Chen was either rich or noble. Other things can be disguised, but a person's temperament cannot be disguised. I naturally can't compare myself with Mr. Huang, but I also believe that you might know my name as Qi Wenjie in Xiangjiang cartoonist. I know Niulao, I know Ma Rongchen, but my special code is that I don't know what Qi Wenjie is. Su Chen murmured in his heart, but a strange expression appeared on his face. You say so much, does this have anything to do with me? Also, is Huang Yulang very awesome? Qi Wenjie found himself completely unable to take over. The guy in front of me seems to completely disregard himself. I don't have time to talk nonsense to you. Su Chen spoke calmly, lead the way, I have something to talk to Huang Yulang about. Qi Wenjie dared not neglect and quickly took Su Chen into Huang Yulang's office. Chapter 10. Huang Yulang, Weasel. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Mr. Su Chen, hello, I've heard so much about you. Entering Huang Yulang's office, Huang Yulang made a long admired expression. Su Chen glanced at Huang Yulang and smiled faintly, Mr. Huang, it seems we don't know each other. Huang Yulang couldn't help but be a little stunned, realizing that the guy in front of him was really speaking straightforwardly. With a few polite words, this guy started to climb up the pole. Mr. Huang, don't talk too much. Su Chen sat down directly on the sofa in the office and glanced at Qi Wenjie again. Tea. Qi Wenjie glanced at Huang Yulang, who also nodded slightly. Subsequently, Qi Wenjie honestly brewed a pot of tea for Su Chen. Long Jing, it seems like it was before the rain, but it should be from last year. Su Chen took a sip and then spoke slowly, the taste is just average, isn't it? Huang Yulang doesn't know anything about tea, Su Chen just talks nonsense, and he can't hear it either. However, these words made Huang Yulang a little hesitant to underestimate Su Chen. He wanted to say something more, and Su Chen simply threw the cowhide bag in his hand to Huang Yulang and said calmly, take a look at this first. Huang Yulang frowned. He usually doesn't know how to read other people's drawings. Small things like reviewing comic scripts can be easily handed over to editors under the company. Why bother him? After all, he himself also needs to work. Dragon and Tiger Gate, but now the ace of the Jade Emperor dynasty. However, Su Chen clearly has some extraordinary background. I'm afraid it's the second generation of wealthy people who don't know where they come from. Although Huang Yulang was unhappy in his heart, he also knew that there were still many people that Xiangjiang couldn't afford to offend himself. Looking at Su Chen's demeanor, he might indicate that he was the descendant of some secret wealthy man. Since you're looking for me, I still need to be polite. At present, Huang Yulang stopped talking and tore open the cowhide bag, taking out the painting and flipping through it. Firstly, at first glance, Huang Yulang's entire expression changed. At the beginning, there was a child named Sun Wukong who was fishing with his tail, and then encountered Boma. The girl thought he was a pervert and started shooting, but to her surprise, a pistol hit Sun Wukong's head and he didn't die. After the misunderstanding was resolved, Sun Wukong took the initiative to invite Boma to his home as a guest. Later, he saw Boma chasing the still dragon ball at home. A sense of shock appeared on Huang Yulang's face, quickly transforming into complex distress, surprise, disbelief, and even a faint hint of jealousy. Exciting and stunning. It's hard to believe that this was done by a young person who looks under 20 years old. To put it bluntly, there are too many talented disciples like Qi Wenjie who far surpass him. After reading it, Huang Yulang eased his furrowed brow and looked at Su Chen, saying, the art is very good, which can be described as quite outstanding in one sentence. However, in terms of content, it is too childish and lacks elements that adults love, making it difficult to establish a foothold in the Xiangjiang comic industry. However, if you want to serialize it in the Jade Emperor Dynasty, it is also possible. Later, Huang Yulang looked up at Su Chen and said, Mr. Su Chen, I don't know who everyone's comic is. Su Chen spoke leisurely and said, I drew it. Did you draw it? Huang Yulang couldn't help but be stunned, and then spoke hesitantly, is this really Mr. Su? But why are you? For no reason, I just like it. Su Chen spoke slowly, Boss Huang, I'm asking you, how much do you think my comic is worth? Huang Yulang, however, fell into contemplation. He didn't expect that this comic was actually drawn by Su Chen. After hesitating for a moment, he spoke slowly and said, it's hard to say. After all, this comic has started serialization, and the market response is still difficult to determine. The taste of readers has always changed. If it doesn't meet their appetite, I may even lose money. At most, I can offer you 1,600 Hong Kong dollars per issue. 1,600 yuan. This price is already quite high, which can be considered the price of top artists under Huang Yulang. For ordinary people, nature is very satisfying. Supporting the family is already something that can be achieved. But Su Chen suddenly had a thought of wanting to sneer. Unexpectedly, the first time I plagiarized a world-renowned work, it was only worth 160 Hong Kong dollars here at the Jade Emperor's court. For Su Chen now, he is completely unsatisfied. But Huang Yulang continued to speak, if Mr. Su is willing, we will sign a contract immediately. For 10 years, we can only allow the publication of your manga in the Jade Emperor Dynasty. Violators will need to pay a compensation of 5 million Hong Kong dollars, and of course, if your manga is excellent enough, the price of each issue can be further increased. Striving for thousands of Hong Kong dollars a month is not a dream. Just. Su Chen glanced at Huang Yulang and then spoke slowly, Boss Huang, are you probably passing a beggar's meal? Huang Yulang's face changed slightly. I suddenly forgot that this guy in front of me is a wealthy second generation. I'm afraid his contract will make him unhappy. Su Chen spoke lightly, do you think I'm lacking money? Huang Yulang looked at Su Chen and couldn't help but say, so, Mr. Su, what do you mean? Simply speaking, from the perspective of the painting style of the Seven Dragon Ball, no one in the entire Xiangjiang can surpass it. Su Chen spoke lightly, the entire Xiangjiang, I mean everyone, including you Huang Yulang, can we draw comics with the painting style of the Seven Dragon Ball? So, Mr. Su, what are your requirements? Huang Yulang couldn't help but ask. For him, the Seven Dragon Ball is indeed very novel, and it may be a hot-selling product in the future. Spending more money is actually not a bad idea. I just love comics. Su Chen spoke slowly and said, I have some conflicts with my family and want to achieve something through comics. Boss Huang, I am very confident in my own strength. If you give me this price, not to mention 15,000, I cannot accept it even if it is 15,000. Speaking of which, Su Chen paused slightly and continued, alright, let me first serialize the 7 Dragon Balls in your Jade Emperor's court to make money. We'll split it in half, and then we'll continue discussing cooperation. If we don't make money, I'll take back my words. Huang Yulang's mind suddenly changed and he asked, I don't know what continuing to discuss cooperation means. Jade Emperor and my company are cooperating. Su Chen shrugged and slowly spoke, I'm also planning to register a comic company to develop the 7 Dragon Ball comic. Mr. Su Chen, I can raise the price for you, but... Huang Yulang paused slightly before continuing, I don't accept your terms.